Yeah, let's kick things off here. So today we're going to talk about selling with stories. We're going to talk about how designers can use storytelling to help close client work and help close better projects or bigger projects, and have better positioning and leverage and these conversations with clients. Yeah, before we do that, I want to do a quick intro. So if you don't know me, this is my intro here. So my name is Corey. I'm a designer, working design and strategy, but I'm also a business coach for designers, and I work one-on-one with designers to help them. And I'll talk about that in a bit. But my background, I have over 15 years of product design experience working in product design. I'm based here in Tokyo, Japan. And as a designer, I've worked in many different types of organizations. Worked as a full-time employee, and as well as building my own agency or doing freelance work essentially. But yeah, as a solo designer, I've been able to scale to multiple six figures a year as just one person, not a full agency or anything like that. So I'm here going to tell you to show you how you can do that and what the potential of just being a solo designer is if you have good sales, right? So this is something we'll kind of like talk about today. But as it stands today, all my projects are minimum of 5-figure projects, and that really kind of goes into my sales and marketing process. Process, and using that as leverage to make sure that I'm able to charge very sustainable rates, very aggressive rates to build my business. And then clients hire me specifically for my expertise and for my value and my perspective that I give to them during the process here. One thing I don't do is I don't do any RFPs, which is request for a proposal, or like doing a proposal for work and trying to bid to get a project. I really just don't believe in that. So I really focus more on how do I win the project and win it within just a conversation and closing the project with conversations. So that's kind of my background of where I'm at with design right now, and kind of my background on sales. But in addition to that, I also used to work at Figma previously. Working at Figma, I just spent a lot of time telling stories. I spent a lot of time speaking on stages and doing different kinds of presentations, not just speaking on stages, but speaking with teams around the world one-on-one, and helping them understand the value of design, and doing a lot of kind of selling the idea of design, selling the idea of collaboration, and all the things that went with it. And through that, I had the opportunity to really kind of sit in, along with some of the best salespeople at Figma, sit in on deals that were 6- and 7-figure deals, and be a core contributor of that. And that a lot of that was due to my storytelling ability in the process. So even though I am not a salesperson, I can still very much contribute to sales and drive sales with my ability, as a storyteller, as a designer. And so that's what I'm going to tell you about today, of like how you can leverage that and how you can really make that, a key part of your business. So, and then along with that, right now, I'm actually focused on coaching designers. So I coach designers one-on-one in my program called the Designer MBA, and I help them build these business skills like sales and marketing and other operational skills, all the business skills that a lot of designers are missing, and design education leaves out, that it really is essential for building your business. So this is where I'm at now. But today, I want to talk about designers. I want to talk about why designers are so bad at sales. So this is something that I have noticed a lot, is that like speaking to many designers, thousands of designers around the world in the past few years and stuff like that, whether you are a freelancer, agency owner, or even just a full-time employee, most designers just don't have the skill of sales. They're really bad at sales, and they're bad at it for a lot of reasons. So one of the main reasons is actually that like designers just never learned how to sell. So they never really learned how to sell because a lot of designers just don't like selling. They don't believe that selling is something they can do. They don't believe that they're a salesperson. They think that salespeople are a certain type of personality, that they're very extroverted, or they have different motivations than creative people. And so they put themselves in a very different say frame set from the very beginning, and say salespeople are these people and I'm not that person, so I can't be a salesperson. I can't use sales. I can't get good at this thing. And it's essentially just a self-limiting belief. So I am a designer. Technically you call me like a creative, but at the same time, I think I'm pretty good at sales. And I'm also not an extrovert. Even though now I'm here sitting here on this webinar speaking to you, I prefer to be an introvert, right? As much as possible. But even I can get good at sales. So it's something that you can learn, but it's all about understanding like what your specific skill set is and how to leverage that in a way that you can, sell. So one of the biggest things that designers mistake is that like they think design will sell itself. And this is something that is common among, I think, all designers, that everyone thinks that, hey, if I'm a good designer, if I just create great design, I show that it will sell itself and I'll be successful from there. But when I think about this, I look around myself and I say, hey, think about how many amazing designers there are out there. And a lot of them are struggling. A lot of them, if they're freelance, they're not really, doing well, even though they're really great designers. Or there are a lot of great designers who are maybe working a full-time role and they are afraid that, just going into freelance or building their own agency, they won't be able to make it. Why? Because design doesn't sell itself. The reality is that, clients don't know what good design looks like, this is very, very important, right? So as designers, we think about like our portfolio. We'll make these beautiful portfolios and have these nice slides and put a nice little angle on it and stuff like that to kind of show off our design and make it very, very attractive. And see, the issue here is that like, if you're not a designer, it's kind of hard to judge what good design is to a certain extent, right? So if you see a designer maybe who is good and average, and there's another designer who is great, if you can tell the difference, you're probably just a designer, right? If the clients knew the difference between what good design was and great design was, they probably would be able to design it themselves, especially now the tools we have today, where a lot of these tools are making it easier to create design. So, designers like to talk a lot about taste being that differentiator. Well, it's like if your client had taste, that had the sense of for design, why wouldn't they just do it themselves? So this is the fundamental problem here, is that a lot of designers are presenting themselves with a portfolio and saying, hey, look at my design, look how great my design is. Why won't you hire me? Why won't you pay me more money? Because my design is better than that person over there. And the clients, they're not designers. They can't really make the judgment on whose design is better, or how much better it is, and is this rate worth it for this designer? So this is kind of the fundamental starting point where designers kind of make the mistake, is that they're trying to sell clients on the design, and clients just don't know what good design looks like, so they can't make a judgment. They judge on other things besides that. So designers are essentially selling the wrong thing, and that's where part of the sales process goes wrong. When I think it comes to clients, a lot of designers think about the client, and they think about what they want, and they think that clients want design inherently. I think that because someone's coming to me and they're asking me for a design, that they want design. So it's kind of contradictory, but it's, even though they're asking you for design, what they actually want is results. They want the results that design brings them. They don't want the branding, they want the effects of what that branding gives them, what the effects of the UX design gives them, the interior design, architecture design, whatever it is, whatever that you provide. They're really looking for the results. But the problem is most designers are stuck at thinking they're the kind of the main character and showing off their design, when they should really be talking about results. So this is where we're really going to dive into today. It's like, how do you change that position, and how do you use that as the anchor to your story today? So just to kind of give you a really good metaphor, this is how I kind of break it down. So most designers are here on the left. They're talking about the ingredients. They're talking about, oh, look how, browned and red these potatoes are. Look at this, beautiful cut of steak. Look at the garlic. Look at these chopped onions and carrots and things like that. And as ingredients, you're trying to say, hey, look how fresh these are. Look how quality these ingredients are. And trying to get the client to judge on that and whether they buy it or not. But the issue is that clients aren't chefs. Clients are just hungry people. They're here just to get the results. What they really want is that they want the results, the one on the right. They want a steak that's already cooked and is going to satisfy them and it's tasty, right? And you're over here trying to show them ingredients and say, hey, look at all this, these great ingredients. Why won't you buy them? Because they're unsure, they're confused. They're like, well, I'm hungry. I came here to eat a meal, and you're giving the ingredients. I'm not a chef. I don't know how to put these things together. I'm not sure if these are the ingredients I need, if it's worth the price, if it's going to lead to the meal that I want to get. So this is the disconnect here, where we want to be much more on the right side of how do we sell them that steak and stop talking about the ingredients? So to get into that, we need to talk about, well, what is sales and define that itself. So when it comes to sales, yeah, I think there's probably a lot of different definitions of sales, but I think this is a kind of like pretty solid, like straightforward definition, right? So the activity of exchanging goods or services for money, the process of persuading a buyer that a product or service meets their needs. So that part here is key here. The process of persuading a buyer is something that probably people think a lot about, and think about, being persuasive and all the tactics and stuff like that that goes along with that. But when I think about sales, this is what I define as this, the sales process here. I think of it as an intentional approach to communication that leverages logic and emotion to demonstrate value. So you see, I left out the part of persuading, because I don't think persuasion is something that you always have to do. I think you can lead to persuasion if you can logically and emotionally demonstrate value of something. Then naturally that thing will sell itself, and people will understand that value and want to purchase that and achieve the transaction. So the persuasion is just a result of the logic and emotion behind it. And when I think about logic and emotion, this reminds me of something else. So this reminds me of the key ingredients of what makes a good story. When I think about storytelling, it's usually a logical set of, say, progression. When it comes to a story, there's a logical formula for how stories work, and if it's not logically put together, then it's hard to follow and hard to understand. So most great stories have some kind of logical structure to it that allows people to kind of understand what the story is about and where it's going. And then along with that, there's a lot of emotion in that. There's emotion to get you engaged in the story, to kind of get you looking forward to the end, the outcome, the results, the conclusion. All those things together really are, two main ingredients of a good story. But a good story isn't just logic and emotion. So we'll break that down even further today. But what I want to say is basically, well, sales is storytelling itself. Just telling a good story can sell things. So if you can tell a good story, you can be a salesperson. So let's get into the story-driven sales framework today and how you can use that as a designer. So first, start about talking about why storytelling. So the reason why I've been focused on storytelling is because I think it's actually something that it comes natural to designers. So when we think about like persuasion and sales, using logic and emotion, I think designers are already doing that in their spaces that they're working in, and it's natural for them to be able to leverage this. So if we can put this in a format that you can use as sales, then I think as designers, you can sell from a place of comfort, a place of experience that you already have. So this is, I think, a great starting point for designers. The reason why is because as designers, we spend a lot of time understanding context and intent. You're doing lots of user research and understanding user behaviors and intent and what people want and how they behave. This is all part of the design process that we do every day, and those are key kind of processes that you'll use in building a story. Along with that, organizing information. We talked about the logical structure of a story and how better logic will make a more coherent story. Well, if you're really good at organizing information, then you should be able to make a coherent story. You should make a logical story, and then from there, guiding toward an outcome, guiding towards a resolution. Right, is what we do using these things like motivation and context and information to guide them towards some outcome that we want, which is, in most cases, it could be, using a device, making a transaction, or other different things. So these skills, the skills of storytelling, are the skills that you already have as a designer, so you can just leverage them. And I'll show you how to do that today. But when it comes to using storytelling as a sales strategy, there are three main ingredients that you need. You just need these three key pillars, and then you can achieve a very persuasive sales strategy, right? So here on the left, we have vision. So you need an attractive destination, something that someone wants to achieve, someone wants to go to, something that is better than what they currently have. You need a vision there, and that vision should be anchored into values, what people value. So we talked about understanding people, their behaviors and motivation, their context. You can use that to understand what they value and use that to create a vision. And then from there, it's not just this abstract vision, this kind of like ideal vision. You need to actually bring that back to a reality and show that this vision is actually realistically achievable. So if you can get them bought into this vision and you can show that it's realistically achievable, then you have essentially the ingredients you need to have a transaction, to close a sale there. So if we break down the elements of storytelling, this is usually what you'll probably come across here. These 6 elements here. You have a character, you have a setting, you have a conflict, there's a plot, there's themes, and then there's a resolution. So there may be more, maybe less, depending on the different formulas, but I think these are kind of like the average setting here that you would have for just thinking about storytelling. So let's frame this in the context of design and using storytelling as a sales mechanism. So first, we have a character. So this is where, again, a lot of designers get wrong. They think that they're the main character in the story. I think because because the client is coming to you, that the focus should be on you, what you do, how you do it, and all these things. But it's the opposite. The client is the main character in the story, not you. So this is what you need to kind of understand and focus on when you're building a story. And the second part is the setting. And that's just the clients, the industry, the market, their initial context, everything about them that you can understand, and their business you can understand, along with their motivations and aspirations. So this is going to be key going into building the vision later on. And then next, you have a conflict, right? So any story has some kind of conflict, some kind of tension point that makes it interesting. But when it comes to using elements of storytelling in sales, you really need to understand, like, what is their struggle right now? What is preventing them from getting to their goals and aspirations, and define that. That's the conflict in the story. And then from there, this all comes together into essentially a plot. And the plot for you as a designer talking to a client is basically, what is the before, the after, and the before, the during, and the after of working together? What does that process look like from the discovery call to finally shipping that project? And how do you work together? That is the plot itself. And within that plot, we've got some underlying themes and some guidelines required to achieve the resolution, which is essentially the vision itself. And then finally, at the very end of the story, you have a resolution, a conclusion. What happens? What are the result of everything in the story, and the plot, and the setting, and then the characters and stuff like that? How do things turn out? And here is where you talk about the results that your work will create. As a designer, you have the ability to make a demonstrable impact on their business. So this is where you describe it. This is where you paint the picture of the vision. So those 6 elements there are the core elements that you're going to think about when you're building a story. And we're going to use this to navigate conversations with clients. But I'm going to focus on the last one here, which is resolution, which is actually the most important one of all. So when you think about resolution, I would like to try to change that over to vision, I think, which is just a more fitting word for this. And to have a great storytelling, great sales through storytelling, you really need to sell the vision more than anything else. So let's go back into our metaphor about the steak and talk about the vision, because the steak there is the vision. It's not the ingredients, it's the result of all those ingredients put together in the right way that makes something that's very desirable, that's very attractive, right? So if you think about that, if you have this steak and it smells really good, looks really good, you describe it really well, even if someone wasn't really hungry, they weren't even thinking about food, if you describe it really well and you really sell that, that steak, someone's going to say, hey, actually, I think I might be hungry. I think I might want to buy a steak. I think I might want to eat this thing, right? So, and that's the thing about design, where a lot of clients might not necessarily be looking for a design, but if you can paint the vision very well, they might, change their mind and be like, hey, I think I'm hungry. I think I want to buy this thing. So the vision is really like, how do you paint the picture of that desirable thing? Paint a picture of something that they can't say no to. If someone is hungry and you show them this picture of this steak here, and you say, this is what you could eat, most people will say, okay, give it to me. I want to eat that. That looks good. Unless like you're a vegetarian or something like that. But like, you really need to understand, again, tap into their emotions and desires. So here is the context, again, understanding the context of uh, the client and their business and what their needs and desires are. Maybe they're vegetarian, so then maybe the steak isn't the best you know the best plate to serve them. It could be something else, but you really need to understand that. So you need to understand what do businesses care about, what excites them, and what is something that they want to achieve, but they are struggling to achieve, that they can't do it on themselves. And you need to paint the picture of what that outcome could be, what it could look like. This is how you kind of create your vision itself. And we'll kind of go into a very specific example in a few minutes here. But yeah, actually, no, we'll go to next on this slide here. So the vision itself is that clear picture. So there are many types of designers. I'm not sure what type of designer you are on this call here and listening to it, but I work with designers across product design, brand, architectural, and interior design as well. So I'll give an example for interior design. So if you're an interior designer, you might be trying to sell a vision that looks like this. This could be the hotel lobby. And you could say, hey, I'm going to, we're going to talk about, how do we improve your hotel lobby? Wouldn't it be nice if we had a lobby that was so attractive that people came from, far away to come and spend time in your lobby and maybe spend money at your bar, maybe because your lobby is really nice, that you can charge higher room rates or higher drink rates and things like that. All these kind of positive effects of the business. So we're not really talking about the design yet. We're just talking about the effects of the lobby, and we're kind of selling the dream there. And you think about like, hey, your business, maybe your hotel is in a location that's not ideal. You have a small chain, a small brand name, and you're trying to stand out, and you're trying to get customers to come to your hotel, even though you're kind of off the main street. If I could, help you achieve that, would that be desirable? And of course, they're going to say yes. Yes, I'd love to have more customers to come to our hotel specifically, not because it's cheap, because they love something about it specifically, etc. This is the vision. This is how you're painting the vision, say, as a designer, from the perspective of the client themselves, what they want, not what you do, right? So once we have the vision, then what we do is, what it does is that creates a gap. And this is really very important in the sales process here of, again, making the vision something is really is very, very attractive, but at the same time, it seems very, very far off, right? So if you're the hotel owner and you have this, lobby on the left, and you're looking like this, it looks like a, kind of like a dingy motel. And then the designer is showing you or painting this picture, this vision of what it could be on the right. The clients, of course, most clients are going to say, hey, this aligns to like, what my value, man, this is something I really, really want. This is the ideal scenario. I really want to get there. But at the same time, they're thinking to themselves like, wow, that's a huge gap. How does this space get to be that space over there? I don't see it. I don't understand it. I would love to go there, but it doesn't feel realistic for me. So now you have this gap, this tension in there. But it's just something that we can use, which is great. Because as designers, our ability is to connect that vision with reality. Once you've painted that picture in their mind and said, hey, this is where your business could be, this is what it could look like, you need to connect the dots on how you actually get there. So if I was an interior designer, I would go into thinking about, well, how do I break down the ingredients? How do I break down this room itself? What are my deliverables that I need to connect the dots between the vision and the current reality to show them that this is actually achievable, and I can do it, right? So we talk about all the different things in your design processes. You're like, oh, well, maybe we'll have certain types of sofas, and we'll have these types of textures. We're going to redo the floors. We're going to have these flowers and decorations. We'll do localized lighting, all these different things. These are your deliverables. So now you can finally talk about what you do, what your deliverables are as a designer, and break that down. What you're trying to do is you're trying to, again, connect the dots between that vision and show them that each piece or that whole vision can be broken down into smaller pieces, and each deliverable is essentially a puzzle piece that makes that up. And then that is something that gives them, an image, or essentially it closes the gap there, right? So what you're doing is by connecting the dots between the vision and reality is you're demonstrating your expertise, you're demonstrating your methodology, and you're demonstrating your deliverables as together the vehicle that allows them to cross that gap, right? So there's a huge gap here between where they are and where they want to go, and they can't cross it themselves. but you're saying, hey, I have a vehicle, or maybe I have a ladder, and this will allow you to cross it. You know, that's me, my method, my deliverables that allow you to get there. So if you're really, really invested in getting to this vision, if you're excited to get to this vision, then you're going to need those three. And that's where we get leverage, right? So as a designer, most designers come in here and they just say, hey, look at my deliverables. Look at the things I create. I create brand guidelines, logo comps, and, you know, product design, etc. They just list out that and they say, I have, you know, X amount of years of experience and stuff like that. It's not really centered around what the client wants. But when you're centered around that vision, and then you anchor that back into, hey, the only way to get to that vision is my expertise and these deliverables that I've laid out, then you have the leverage of them basically saying, well, if I want to get to this, then I have to buy you and your deliverables, your expertise together. Anything else on that, removed from that, is compromising that, right? For example, if you said, hey, I like this is a great vision, but there's another designer I'm looking at and that person is cheaper. Well, if you remove your expertise from that scenario, then there's a high probability this is not going to work, right? Because that's a key part in achieving this vision. And the same on the other side is like, well, if you compromise on deliverables, you're also compromising on the vision itself. So these things are basically a leverage in saying that, hey, these things are required to achieve your vision. And if you remove any of these, reduce any of these, that you're reducing your probability of achieving the vision. So you don't want to compromise. And for, you know, most people, if they're really bought into the vision well, they're going to say, yes, then I want that. Or ideally, they're going to say, well, actually, I want even more than that. Let's scale up, let's do more. And that's really how you create leverage as a designer. So kind of doing a before and after. A lot of designers are here over on the left thinking of like, well, when I have a discovery call with the client, I'm asking for the project brief, and then we go to the discovery call to essentially scope the deliverables. You say, oh, I'm going to do this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing, and that's it. And that scope, once it's laid out by the designer and the budget's laid out, most of the time what happens is the client looks at it and says, well, let's do maybe less of this, and let's cut this and this and this, and it gets narrower because they're thinking about the budget, and they're thinking about, well, do I need this many ingredients to make whatever I'm trying to make, right? Versus when we're leading with the story and defining the vision, it's a very different scenario here. So what happens is your goal is, when you're speaking to customers, is actually to scope the project based on the vision, sell the vision, and then sell the pieces that will achieve that vision, which will ideally, say, expand the deal or scope to align closer to the vision. A great example is if you have a client who comes to you and says, hey, I want a logo design. If you're a brand designer, yes, you can do a logo design, but I think when you think about a greater vision of like what branding could do for that business, usually a logo is not going to cut it. In most cases, you know, branding is much more than the logo, and to have the actual full effects of branding, you're going to need a larger scope. So by starting with the vision, you can get people to kind of think about that larger scope of what that could be, and then bring in the full deliverables that you need to achieve that vision. Because if they go back and say, hey, I just want the logo, then they'll realize that they're compromising the vision, what they could achieve, by just trying to, you know, scope down to a single deliverable. And so this is the shift that you're making in the way you approach customers. And this really kind of goes into this phenomenon that I call expanding the deal. So when you're talking to clients, most clients, they ask for a lot less than they actually really need. If someone says, hey, I want a logo, you can give them a logo, but if you actually ask them what they really need, what they're trying to do, if they're trying to reposition, say, their brand to a different, you know, product or market segment, you know, obviously maybe a logo is not enough. So what clients really need, if you actually go into diving into what their motivations are, what they're trying to do, is usually much, much more. And if you can get them to see that, then you can essentially expand the scope of the project, expand the deal, which gets you obviously higher paying projects that you can sell at a premium because of your expertise, but also because of the kind of quantity of work that you need to do to achieve that as well. So this is kind of the ideal scenario here. And, you know, selling, storytelling is really how you leverage that. So going back to our metaphor, this is the difference here. So most designers are here starting on the left, and they're saying they're starting with a portfolio, and then they have along with the portfolio on their website, they just have a menu of things that they do. They say, I do logo design, I do brand guidelines, I do, landing pages, I do social media, etc. And they have this whole list of deliverables. They have all these things, and all that does is just causes confusion, and it gives lack of confidence because if the person's here and they're hungry and they just want to eat, giving them ingredients and showing them all these ingredients is just not really helpful because they're not a chef. But if someone is here if you start on the right, when you're thinking about vision and storytelling, this gives them the clarity and the confidence and the motivation that they need to move forward. They understand exactly what you're offering. They understand what it could do for them, what the value is there. It gives them confidence that, well, I can get to this result because you're breaking down that vision and you're showing them the steps to how you actually achieve that vision. And along with that, you're giving them clear motivation. They want to do it. They're bought into the vision and they want to get there. So when you price on that, you can price more aggressively because your customer is much more motivated and they don't want to lose the opportunity to achieve that vision versus on the left here, there really isn't anything that's anchored on and they don't see the outcome. So there's not much to lose. So from the very beginning, they're in a mindset of how do we cut things down? And that's the huge difference here when it comes from, just, leading with a portfolio of deliverables versus leading with vision and storytelling. And then kind of bringing this back all full circle. So what does this look like in practice? So for me, this is how I break it down. So you'll see that like the kind of order of these things is a bit like shuffled, but yeah, let's break it down. So one of the key things I didn't mention here yet was that before any client discovery call, I always do some research. They don't want to come in like completely like blind on something. You want to at least do some surface level research. So if a client reaches out and says, hey, I want to talk to you about this, look at their website, look at their business, understand what that is about, and try to come up with a bit of a story and understanding before coming into the conversation itself. So then you're kind of primed and you have, a start point there. But once you are in the conversation, then the first step is not really talking about deliverables. It's just talking about the context, aligning on the context. What is their business about? Who are they? Who are they? What are they trying to do? Their motivations, aspirations, the current business setting and the conflict, all those different things. And again, this is not, when I say telling a story, you're speaking to them, but it's also more of a conversation and kind of pulling out these details as well and building these things together. So aligning on context is where you start. And then from there, you go to the key part, which is defining the vision. And that is best made together. So once you understand their character setting and conflict, then you work with them and say, hey, what about this? What if we did this? What if your business changed this way and stuff like that? See how they respond. And once you see positive, response, then dig in and start to build that vision and get them very, very excited about the future, the potential of their business. And once you have that, then we go to the last step. You go back to how do we show them the gap, but then also show them how we can bring that to reality. How do we fill that gap? Again, we talk about our expertise, our method, and our deliverables as the way to get there. That's, essentially the plot and the themes itself. And then once you have that set, then it's just anchoring and closing and saying, hey, to achieve this vision, this is what it costs. This is how we do it. If that vision is something that you really want to achieve, this is how we do it together. And then they make the decision from there. And that's how you close projects with storytelling, rather than just trying to sell your portfolio. But yeah, just to kind of wrap things up here. So again, on those, three key pillars, there's always a vision that everything's anchored on. It's some kind of attractive destination. And that's connected to what the client values. You have to research that. You have to dig that up and pull it out from them. And then what you do, your deliverables, your methodology, your approach is what makes it reality. And you have to show them that this is how we can bridge that gap. So that's how you use storytelling as a sales strategy. This is what I've used myself on many different projects, and closed 5-figure deals with just 30-minute calls and email very easily, no pressure. And once you get used to this, I think you'll enjoy the process as well, and it will again help you close better projects at better rates. from there. But one thing I want to mention is that, this is only one piece of kind of the puzzle here. So when it comes to building a design business, of course, sales is incredibly important. But there are other pieces along with that you really need to kind of build something that is sustainable, that can be, it can grow over time with that. So this is when it goes back, why I go back to the designer MBA. So the designer MBA is really, really my answer for how do I teach designers that. Because what we talked about today is we talked about business skills. These are all business skills, just kind of framed in the context of designers and where they're at today. And a lot of designers are missing these core business skills, and that's why they're kind of failing in business when they could be thriving, especially in a market where there's tons of designers in competition there. If you have business skills that set you apart, you'll be in a very good space. But yeah, so the designer MBA is how I do that, by helping designers with one-on-one coaching to build their business. And the way we do it is we break that down into 4 different pillars. First, we talk about your offer and your strategic positioning. That's core to everything. And then from there, we think about how do we build your marketing to sales pipeline. So today we talked about sales, but it's if you don't have an offer already and you don't have marketing to get even a call for sales, you can't really use that, right? So this is why these things are very important. And then we talk about strategic design, which is essentially how do you execute design that connects to demonstrable business results, tangible results, and making your client more money, getting them more users and things like that. Things that you can prove shows that design is contributing to their growth. Teaching you how to do that. And the last part is scalable systems of, how do you increase the value of what you provide over time with systems and templates and things like that, and the quality, while also trying to decrease the effort required to do that over time. So this goes all across everything when it comes to your marketing, the sales pipeline, but also your execution on what you deliver to your clients. So these are the places that we focus on in the Designer MBA program. And usually I'm working with designers in one of 2 scenarios. One of them is designers who are already freelancer or have a small agency, and they've just been struggling for a while, and they need to kind of shift into building these foundations to become more thriving business owners and help them grow their business. And then the second one is designers who are making a transition. So designers who are in a full-time role and they're thinking hey, maybe I want to go freelance or make a small agency, but I don't have any real clarity or direction, and I just feel there feels like there's a lot of risk there. It feels like the freedom of being freelance or building your own business and the upside of possible income and stuff like that, all those benefits are there, but I'm not sure if I can get there. So giving them a clear roadmap to how to get to successful outcomes, and kind of again, guiding them along the way and teaching them the core skills is what I do during that program for those 2 types of scenarios there. And the way we work is I teach you the concepts of strategy, just like we did today during this session here, and then we apply it to your specific context. So understanding what you particularly have as a challenge and what your context is, and then showing you piece by piece how to put that together. And then you take action, you put that in your business, and then you get to results. So yeah, that's it. That's the high level gist of the Designer MBA. If you want to learn more, feel free to ping me on Instagram if you have any questions as well. But yeah, that's it. That was selling with stories. So I hope you enjoyed this, and plan to do hopefully more webinars. Let me know what you thought, if you have any questions at all.